All right, guys, in this video, we are going to take a look at volume of cones. So, if you remember back to your volume of pyramids, if you've learned about that, you should know that the volume of a pyramid is equal to 1/3 times base times height. And what actually ends up happening is that a cone and a pyramid act pretty much the same way when we're talking about volume. Now, with a cone, our base and height, the height is exactly like it is in a pyramid. It's from the center all the way up to the top of the cone, okay? Or if the cone is oblique, meaning that the center doesn't actually line up, so you could have a cone, let me try and sketch one out here. You could end up with a cone like this. Okay, notice how the tip of the cone, that's a rough cone, but you get the idea here, okay? Notice how the tip of the cone is over here. That would be an oblique cone, so it might not actually fall in your base, but for most of your regular cones, your height is going to fall inside of your base, all right? So notice what we have going on here. It's 1/3, just like a pyramid, times the area of the base. Notice that's the area of a circle, pi r squared, times the height. Okay, so when we're dealing with volumes of a cone, that's our formula. That's what we're going to use moving forward, and it honestly is pretty much a lot like a pyramid. All right, so let's look at this first one. Let's go ahead and find the volume of this cone. I'm going to just do 1/3 times the area of the base, pi r squared, times the height, which is, in this case, times 9. All right, so if I solve that thing out by hand, I end up with 36 times 3, which is 108 pi. All right, and there we go. There's our solution for the volume of that particular cone. Now, you could always multiply 108 times pi, and that would end up getting you a decimal answer. And if you're rounding to the nearest tenth, that's what you would be looking for. If you're looking for terms of pi, then it would be 108 pi. Let's look at one where we don't have the height. So what would I do with a problem like this? Notice they've given us this 5 here. Now, this 5, notice how it's along the side of my cone. That is called a slant height. And a lot of times we use a cursive L to mark the slant height as opposed to like an H dealing with our actual height. Well, if we look at the 3, the 5, and the height, notice what shape it makes. It actually makes a right triangle. So this is a place where we're going to need our Pythagorean Theorem. If I've got two sides of a right triangle, looking for a third side. So do remember that it is not necessarily the x, or in this case, the h, so I'm adding those, that gets squared, but and left by itself, but it's actually the hypotenuse, which is opposite our 90 degrees. So if I solve this thing out, hopefully we recognize that this is going to come out to 4. This is a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. That's a common one that would be worth knowing or recognizing. Okay, but we could solve this out too. I could get 9 plus x squared is equal to 25. Subtract 9 from both sides, take the square root, you end up at 4. All right, so now that I have the height, then I could solve. So again, it's 1/3 times the area of the base, which is pi r squared, pi 3 squared, times the height, which would be 4, and that is just going to come out to 12 pi as an answer. All right, so that's how we deal with some of the cones where we're missing the height. Let's look at one more. Notice in this one, my volume is 39 pi, and I'm solving for the height, okay? So what I'm going to do is I know that 39 pi is equal to 1/3 times pi times 3 squared times x, all right? So the first thing I want to do, if I divide both sides by pi, I'm just going to solve this thing out for x, because that's my height. So that's pi, so these pi's are going to go away. So now I've got 39 is equal to 1/3 times 3 squared times x. Hopefully I recognize that 1/3 times 3 squared, well, that's just equal to 3, right? So I've got 39 is equal to 3x. And I'm going to divide both those sides. Running out of space here. I'm going to divide both those sides by 3, and I end up at 13 is equal to x. So that would be the height of this cone. So you can solve these a couple different ways. if we're solving for just the volume, pretty straightforward. If they give you like the volume and you have to work backwards, or maybe they give you the area of the base and then you have to, solve for the radius, or there's lots of different things that you could do. You're given the volume and you need to solve for the area of the base, things like that, okay? But you're using that same formula, and that formula is very similar to what you'd use for a pyramid, 1/3 times the base times the height, which in this case, the base is pi r squared. So that wraps up our discussion on solving for the volume of a cone.